Hola, ¿cómo están, my compañeros? So I've been trying to really look into whether or not they could force vaccines on people, mandatory vaccines, and I've come across some useful information that might be beneficial, especially to know in the course of any sort of dialogue you have between yourself and somebody with that needle standing in front of you. So this Congressional Research Service report is from before the pandemic. And interesting enough, this first paragraph speaks about how the measles outbreak of 2019 was going to take over the world. And so in 2020, we were going to have massive measles. And then 2021, and it would be due to the anti-vaxxers, or in the first paragraph, it speaks about how the Amish are not vaccinated. Oh, mercy, the Amish are not vaccinated. But interesting enough about the measles cases is that if you actually investigate, this is from the CDC, the measles cases and outbreaks. This is the 2019 measles pandemic that they have listed on the chart. You see the large bar on the graph. And then you would figure 2020 would have been maybe double, maybe at least larger, you know, based upon the logic. And I just think it's so silly that measles has disappeared and influenza has disappeared. But then back to what I'm originally trying to talk about. I just think it's funny. They base this mandatory vaccine information off of that measles information, and the measles information is bunk. Okay? So that's all I'm trying to say in that point. One of the most important aspects of this report is it reveals that the powers that are granted to public health officials are based off of the fact that if somebody gets the vaccine, that they will no longer be able to get sick or transmit a sickness. If that has to be a fundamental aspect of what they're forcing on you. They can only force you to take it if it will stop you from getting sick and will stop you from getting other people sick. And surprisingly enough, that's not at all how the gene therapy works, how the mRNA COVID vaccine or COVID gene therapy works. They've said it several times. They say, no, it can't stop you from getting coronavirus. No, it won't stop you from passing it on. And so I think in that instance, it negates their powers. Here, I'll read this is where I get it from. The middle paragraph of the consideration for Congress. First word, granted. Granted, first word, Congress. First word, nonetheless. Nonetheless, Congress has granted broad, flexible powers to federal health authorities who must use their judgment in attempting to protect the public against itself, against the spread of communicable diseases. Under the Public Health Service Act, the authority to make and enforce regulations necessary to prevent the introduction, the transmission, or the spread of communicable diseases from foreign countries into the states or possessions, or from one state or possession into another state or possession, could conceivably be used to mandate vaccines, provided that the authority is not exercised in a way that otherwise violates the Constitution or fails to comply with other statutory requirements, such as the Administrative Procedure Act. As long as it follows the administrative procedures, who cares about the Constitution? They don't. The Administrative Procedures Act. They have already violated the Constitution. Obviously, when they force you to take a drug, that's a violation of the Constitution. But I think the point I'm trying to make is very important, is that this gene therapy will not prevent you from getting sick and will not prevent you from passing sickness on to other people. That right there negates it from being defined as a vaccine. And since it is not defined as a vaccine, then all of the public health authority based upon the Public Health Service Act is null and void, in my personal opinion, because they've not had the correct wording inside any of the laws to include gene therapy, to include this type of intervention into another person's life, taking a needle, putting it in their body, and then making them produce a protein for the rest of their life that they never had produced ever. And that once they come across this protein, this GP41 spike protein in the real world, all of a sudden the body will say, oh my goodness, this is not me. This is not me. It's everywhere. Oh my goodness, it's everywhere. It's not me. And it will cause what is called a cytokine storm. Very frightening, because it releases a deluge of fluid into the lungs. You drowned in your own body pretty quickly. But I'm scared that this gene therapy is a two-parter. I feel like once they get the first and second dose, that's the first part. The second part will be once, I guess it'll be a three-parter. The second part is as the viral load is growing inside of the body, your body produces more and more of this GP41 spike. And then the third part is coming across the GP41 spike in the real world and having that self, not self conflict go on. So that's something that I'm trying to warn others about. Gene therapy is not vaccination, and therapy is not experiment, or there's a difference between experimentation and actual therapy. So do not let them experiment with gene therapy as opposed to give you a vaccine. There's a difference between experimenting with gene therapy and giving you a vaccine in a therapeutic way. I'm going to include a really cool link that talks about the difference, or not the difference, but just in general what gene therapy is. And I think it's important to know the difference, at least know what gene therapy is. It's literally like, it's an enslavement of your own cells. It's the enslavement of your own cells.